The ice bucket slipped from Simone's fingers and crashed against the marble floor, sending frozen cubes skittering across the hallway. But she barely heard the sound. Her entire world had narrowed to the gap in the curtains of room 2847. Her honeymoon suite. The suite she was supposed to be sharing with her husband of exactly 3 days. Through that narrow opening she could see everything. Her husband Brandon, shirtless, pulling another woman into his arms. The woman's red dress was the same one Simone had noticed at dinner, worn by the striking blonde who'd smiled at her in the elevator. The same woman who'd said, "Congratulations on your wedding," just yesterday. Now that woman was kissing Simone's husband. Not a quick kiss. Not an accident. A deep, familiar kiss that spoke of practice and comfort and something far worse than a drunken mistake. Simone's hand reached for the door handle, then stopped. Some instinct told her to wait. To watch. To understand before she reacted. She'd learned in her 6 years as an event coordinator that the first reaction was rarely the right one. Information was power. She pressed herself against the wall beside the door, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She could hear their voices now through the heavy door. "I can't believe we pulled this off," the woman said, laughing. Her voice was light, carefree. "Happy." "I told you it would work," Brandon replied. His voice was different than the one he used with Simone. More relaxed. More real. "She doesn't suspect a thing." The woman laughed again. "Taking your wife and your girlfriend on the same honeymoon. You're either brilliant or insane." "Both, probably," Brandon said. "But worth it. These rooms are on opposite ends of the resort. She thinks I'm at the gym every morning and having business calls every evening. She's so trusting, it's almost too easy." Simone's stomach turned. The gym. The business calls. The way he'd insisted on planning this entire honeymoon himself, refusing her help. The separate room he'd booked 4 conference calls because he didn't want to disturb her rest. It had all been for this. For her. "How much longer are you going to keep this going?" the woman asked. "Tiffany." The name came back to Simone now. Tiffany from Brandon's office. The one he'd introduced at the wedding as just a colleague, who'd happened to book a vacation at the same resort. What a coincidence, everyone had said. What a lie, Simone thought now. "I don't know," Brandon said. "She has her uses. Her family has connections, her event planning business brings in decent money. And she signed the prenup without even reading it." Simone's blood ran cold. She remembered that day. Brandon had been so apologetic about it, saying his lawyer insisted, saying it was just a formality. "It's not that I don't trust you," he'd said. "It's just protection for both of us." She'd signed it because she'd loved him. Because she'd trusted him. Because she'd been a fool. "But you don't love her," Tiffany said. It wasn't a question. "Love her?" Brandon laughed. The sound was cruel, nothing like the warm laugh he used with Simone. "I love what she can do for me. I love the image we project. But love? That's for you, babe. You know that." Simone's legs trembled. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her expensive honeymoon dress pooling around her. The ice from the dropped bucket was melting, creating a cold puddle that seeped into the fabric. She didn't move. Inside the room she heard kissing sounds. Then rustling. Then silence of a different kind. She should leave. She should walk away. She should go back to her room, pack her things and fly home. File for divorce. Move on with her life. But something kept her frozen there in the hallway. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the need to fully understand the depth of the betrayal. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something growing in her chest that felt like anger but burned hotter. Felt like pain but cut sharper. A hotel employee turned the corner and stopped when she saw Simone sitting there. "Ma'am? Are you all right? Do you need help?" Simone looked up at her. The woman's name tag read Gabriella. Her eyes were kind and concerned. "No," Simone said quietly. Then louder, stronger, "No. I don't need help." She stood up, her legs steady now. The anger had crystallized into something solid. Something she could use. "But I do need you to do something for me," Simone continued. "I need you to tell me everything you know about room 2847. Who booked it, when they booked it, and how long they've been here." Gabriella hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't share guest information." Simone pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. She showed Gabriella her account balance, then the recent transaction. A charge for room 2847. In her husband's name. Using their joint account. The account she'd funded with her business profits. "That's my husband in there," Simone said. Her voice was calm now. Dead calm. "And that's my money paying for his affair. So I'm not asking you to violate any rules. I'm asking you to tell me about a room I'm paying for. Gabriella looked at the phone, then at Simone's face, then back at the door of room 2847. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She'd probably seen this before. Nice hotels attracted all kinds of betrayals. The room was booked 3 months ago, Gabriella said quietly. Same day as your honeymoon suite. Booked together, actually, in the same reservation system. The woman checked in the day before your wedding. The day before her wedding. Simone felt something inside her crack. Not break. Crack. Like ice under pressure. And through that crack, something cold and powerful began to flow. Thank you, she said to Gabriella. She meant it. She walked back to her own suite, her head high, her steps measured. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She had work to do. Behind her, in room 2847, her husband laughed with his mistress, not knowing that his perfect plan had just shattered. Not knowing that the woman he thought was so trusting was about to become his worst nightmare. Not knowing that she'd stopped being his wife the moment she dropped that ice bucket in the hallway. Simone sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall. 2 hours ago, she'd been the happiest woman alive. Now she was calculating exactly how much money she had access to and how quickly she could move it. But first she needed to think. She needed to understand how she'd been so blind. She'd met Brandon 18 months ago at a charity gala she'd organized. He'd been charming, attentive, and interested in her work. Unlike other men she'd dated, he'd asked about her business, encouraged her dreams, and treated her like an equal partner. Or so she'd thought. Their first date had been at an art gallery. He'd talked about his work as a financial consultant, about his plans to start his own firm someday. He'd seemed ambitious but not greedy, successful but not arrogant. He'd kissed her goodnight at her door and hadn't pushed for more. I want to do this right, he'd said. You're special. She'd fallen for it. All of it. Within 3 months he'd moved into her apartment. She'd been hesitant at first, but he'd been convincing. Why waste money on 2 places? He'd asked. Besides, I want to wake up next to you every morning. He'd contributed to bills, though looking back now, she realized his contributions had been minimal. She'd been making more than him, and he'd said he was saving for their future. She thought it was sweet. Now she knew he'd probably been spending it on Tiffany. The proposal had come 6 months ago, at the same charity gala where they'd met. He'd gotten down on one knee in front of 200 people, tears in his eyes, and asked her to be his wife. She'd said yes without hesitation, overwhelmed by the romance of it all. Planning the wedding had been stressful, but Brandon had been supportive. Or so she'd thought. He'd insisted on handling certain things himself. The honeymoon. The hotel bookings. The flights. Let me do this, he'd said. You do so much. Let me take care of you. Red flags she'd missed. He'd been secretive about his phone. He'd had unexplained evening meetings. He'd sometimes smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. But he'd always had explanations. Work emergencies. A female client who wore too much perfume. Conference calls with international contacts. She'd believed him because she'd loved him. Because she'd wanted to believe in them. The wedding had been perfect. Everything she'd dreamed of. 200 guests, a beautiful venue, flowers and lights and music. Her parents had cried. Her friends had celebrated. And Brandon had looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. She remembered Tiffany at the wedding now. Brandon had introduced her. This is Tiffany from the office. She helped me prepare for a big client presentation. Simone had shaken her hand, smiled, thanked her for coming. Tiffany had smiled back, sweet and warm. You look beautiful, she'd said. Brandon's a lucky man. The memory made Simone's stomach turn. How had Tiffany stood there at their wedding, knowing what she knew? How had she smiled and congratulated them while planning to steal away the groom? But more importantly, how had Brandon stood at that altar, looked Simone in the eyes and promised to love and cherish her, knowing he was going to bring his mistress on their honeymoon? Simone's phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Still at the gym, babe. Might grab a steam bath after. Don't wait up. Get some rest. Love you. Love you. She stared at those 2 words until they lost all meaning. Then she typed back, okay. Love you too. She hit send, then immediately felt dirty. But she couldn't let him know she knew. Not yet. Not until she had a plan. She opened her laptop and logged into their joint bank account. The account she'd set up when they'd moved in together. The account where her business profits were deposited. The account Brandon had access to as her partner. The balance made her feel sick. It was less than she remembered. Significantly less. She started going through the transactions. Restaurants she'd never been to. Hotels she'd never stayed at. Jewelry purchases. Expensive gifts. All of it charged to their account over the past 8 months. 8 months. That's how long he'd been spending her money on Tiffany. She did the math. Over $40,000. Her money. Her work. Spent on his affair. Simone closed the laptop and stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. It should have been romantic. It should have been the perfect honeymoon moment. Instead, it was the end of her marriage and the beginning of something else. She trusted Brandon completely. She'd given him everything. Her love, her home, her money, her future. And he'd repaid her by turning their honeymoon into a joke. By spending her money on another woman. By looking at her with pretend love while saving his real feelings for someone else. The old Simone would have confronted him. Would have screamed and cried and asked why. Would have tried to understand, to fix it, to save the marriage. But the old Simone had died in that hallway, next to a puddle of melting ice. The new Simone had different plans. She picked up her phone and started making calls. First to the bank. Then to a lawyer. Then to the airline. By the time Brandon returned from his gym session, Simone was in bed pretending to sleep. She heard him shower, smelled the soap that would wash away any trace of Tiffany's perfume. He climbed into bed beside her and kissed her shoulder. "Sweet dreams, beautiful wife," he whispered. She kept her breathing steady and even. Kept her eyes closed. Kept her rage buried deep. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow everything changes. Morning came too early and too bright. Simone had barely slept, her mind racing through plans and possibilities. Brandon was still asleep beside her, one arm thrown over her waist in a gesture that once would have made her feel safe. Now it just made her skin crawl. She slipped out of bed carefully and went to the bathroom. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes were puffy, her skin was pale, and she looked exhausted. But underneath the tired exterior, she saw something new. Something hard and determined. She showered and dressed, putting on makeup to hide the evidence of her sleepless night. By the time Brandon woke up, she looked perfectly normal. The perfect wife on her perfect honeymoon. "Morning, beautiful," he said, stretching. "Sleep well." "Great," she lied. "You?" "Like a baby." He checked his phone and she watched his fingers move across the screen. Texting someone. Probably Tiffany. "I thought we could have breakfast together," she said. "On our balcony?" He looked up, surprised. They'd barely eaten together since arriving. He'd always had some excuse. "Actually, I have a conference call in 20 minutes, he said. "Big client. You know how it is." "Right?" Simone said. "Of course. Work never stops." He kissed her forehead and grabbed his laptop. "I'll be in the business center. Might take a few hours. Why don't you hit the spa? Relax. You deserve it." She smiled. "Maybe I will." The moment he left, Simone moved. She'd been awake half the night planning, and now it was time to gather information. She opened Brandon's suitcase and went through it methodically. In a side pocket, she found a receipt from a jewelry store. A necklace. Purchased 2 weeks before the wedding. She'd never received a necklace. In his wallet, which he'd carelessly left on the dresser, she found a photograph. Tucked behind his credit cards. It was Brandon and Tiffany, clearly taken months ago, both smiling at the camera. On the back, written in feminine handwriting, "Can't wait for our real honeymoon." Simone sat down hard on the bed. Our real honeymoon. That's what this was to them. The whole thing had been planned. The separate room wasn't just for secret meetings. It was Tiffany's room. Her space. Her vacation with Brandon. Simone was just the cover story. The legal wife who made it all look legitimate. She took pictures of everything with her phone. The receipt. The photograph. She'd need evidence for the divorce. Then she did something she'd never done before. She opened Brandon's laptop. He'd left it behind, probably figuring she'd never snoop. The password was easy. Her birthday. Of course it was. Another way to make her think she mattered. His email was open. She started scrolling through messages and each one was worse than the last. Messages from Tiffany going back 10 months. Sweet messages at first, flirty and fun. Then more serious. Then explicit. Simone's stomach churned, but she kept reading. One email from 7 months ago stood out. "I don't understand why you're still with her. When are you going to leave?" Brandon's response, "Soon, babe. I promise. I just need to get through the wedding first. Her family has connections I need for the business. And she signed a prenup that protects my assets. Once I'm established, I'll file for divorce and we can be together for real. Just trust me." Simone felt like she'd been punched. He'd married her for her connections. For her money. For what she could do for his career. The prenup wasn't protection for both of them. It was protection for him, structured so that he'd keep everything while she got nothing. She'd signed it without reading it because she trusted him. Because she thought they were partners. She kept scrolling. Found the email where Brandon had suggested the honeymoon plan. Why don't you come to the resort too? I'll book you a room. We can be together while I keep up appearances with Simone. She'll never know. She's too trusting. Too naive. Tiffany's response, this is insane. I love it. Book it. They'd laughed about her. Called her naive. Planned their affair right under her nose. Simone found the booking confirmations. Both rooms booked on the same day, charged to their joint account. Her money paying for his betrayal. She found flight confirmations too. Brandon and Simone on one booking. Brandon and Tiffany on another. He'd even used the same frequent flyer number, not caring if she ever checked. Why would he care? She was too trusting. Simone closed the laptop and stood up. Her hands were shaking, not from fear or sadness, but from pure rage. She walked to the window and looked out at the resort. Somewhere out there, Tiffany was probably relaxing by a pool, waiting for Brandon to finish his conference call, and come to her. Simone thought about Tiffany. Pretty, young, ambitious. She'd known Brandon was married and hadn't cared. Had actually encouraged him to go through with the wedding. Had stood in Simone's home at the reception, drinking champagne and smiling, while planning to sleep with the groom on his honeymoon. Some women might feel sorry for the other woman. Might think she'd been manipulated or lied to. But the emails made it clear. Tiffany knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted Brandon and she didn't care who got hurt in the process. Fine. If that's how she wanted to play it, Simone would make sure they both lost. She picked up the hotel phone and called the concierge. Hi, this is Mrs. Bennett in Suite 2408. I need to make some arrangements. Of course, Mrs. Bennett. How can I help you? I need to change some flight bookings. And I need access to the resort's business center. The private one. Not the public one where my husband is working. Absolutely. I can arrange that. When would you like to come down? Now, Simone said. Right now. She grabbed her purse and the folder containing all their important documents. Marriage certificate. Banking information. Credit cards. Brandon had left everything in the room safe, the combination set to her birthday again. He'd made it so easy. It was almost insulting how little effort he'd put into hiding his affair. He really had thought she'd never find out. Thought she'd never question him. Thought she'd just accept whatever story he told her. He'd underestimated her completely. That was going to be his biggest mistake. As Simone walked through the resort toward the private business center, she passed the main pool. And there, lounging on a chair in a red bikini, was Tiffany. She was alone, reading a magazine, a tropical drink beside her. Their eyes met for just a second. Tiffany smiled, the same friendly smile she'd given at the wedding. A smile that said she was winning. Simone smiled back. A smile that said not for long. Then she kept walking, her head high, her purpose clear. It was time to start taking back what was hers. The private business center was empty except for one staff member, a young man named Carlos who took one look at Simone's face and asked if she needed water. I'm fine, Simone said, though her voice was shaking. I just need to use a computer and make some private calls. Take all the time you need, Carlos said kindly. He showed her to a small office with a door that locked. I'll make sure no one disturbs you. Simone thanked him and closed the door. Then she sat down and let herself breathe. Just breathe. 5 deep breaths to clear her head and focus her thoughts. She'd spent 6 years building her event planning business from nothing. She'd negotiated with difficult clients, handled disasters, and solved impossible problems. She was good at staying calm under pressure. This was just another problem to solve. A painful, personal problem, but still just a problem. She opened her laptop and got to work. First, she called their bank. She explained that she needed to make changes to the joint account. The representative was helpful and professional. I want to transfer all funds from the joint account into a new individual account, Simone said. Today. May I ask the reason for the transfer? I'm getting divorced, Simone said. The words felt strange in her mouth. I need to protect my assets. There was a pause. I understand. Let me help you with that. It took 30 minutes to set up the new account and initiate the transfer. The funds wouldn't move instantly, but they'd be processed by end of business day. Brandon would wake up tomorrow morning with an empty account. Next, she called the credit card companies. All their cards were in her name with Brandon as an authorized user. She'd set them up that way because her credit score had been better. Another thing she'd done to help their partnership. Another thing he'd taken advantage of. She canceled his authorized user status on every single card, reported the cards as lost and requested new ones with different numbers. They'd be mailed to her business address, not the apartment they shared. Then she called the airline. This part was trickier. I need to make changes to our return flights, she told the agent. My husband and I have separate bookings for the return trip, and I need to modify both. She gave the confirmation numbers she'd found in Brandon's email. I see 2 bookings here, the agent said. Brandon Bennett and Simone Bennett on one reservation, and Brandon Bennett and Tiffany Harrison on another. Is that correct? Hearing it stated so plainly made Simone's throat tight. Yes, that's correct. What changes would you like to make? Cancel the Bennett and Bennett reservation. Refund to the original payment method. That was Brandon's personal credit card. He'd get the money back, but it wouldn't help him get home. For the Bennett and Harrison reservation, cancel Brandon Bennett's ticket only. Leave Miss Harrison's ticket active. There was a long pause. Ma'am, you're not listed on the second reservation. I can't make changes to tickets that aren't in your name. Simone had prepared for this. I'm calling from my husband's phone. I have all his information. His credit card, his passport number, everything. She rattled off the details she'd memorized from his wallet. Another pause. Hold please. Simone waited, her heart pounding. This was the crucial moment. If they wouldn't let her make the changes, she'd have to find another way. Ma'am? The agent was back. I've verified the information. I can make those changes. However, I should note that canceling Mr. Bennett's ticket will result in a penalty fee. That's fine, Simone said. Charge it to the card on file. And for your return flight? Book me on the next available flight out. First class. I don't care about the cost. I want to leave today. Today. The agent sounded surprised. You're cutting your honeymoon short? Yes, Simone said flatly. There's been a change in plans. It took another 20 minutes to arrange everything. By the time she hung up, Simone had a first-class ticket home leaving in 6 hours. Brandon had no ticket at all. Tiffany had a ticket for 5 days from now, the original return date. Let them figure out how to get home together with no money and no credit cards. Simone sat back in the chair and closed her eyes. She'd done it. The revenge was in motion. But she didn't feel victorious. She felt hollow and tired and sad. 3 days ago she'd been married. She'd been happy. She'd thought she had everything she'd ever wanted. Now she was sitting in a business center on what should have been her honeymoon, systematically dismantling the life she'd built with a man who'd never loved her at all. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Conference call running long. Might miss lunch. Why don't you enjoy the beach? I'll find you later. Find you later. He probably meant he'd find her after he'd spent a few more hours with Tiffany. Simone typed back. Sounds good. Take your time. I'm going to the spa. She wasn't going to the spa. She was going to pack. But he didn't need to know that. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification. The bank transfer had been expedited. All funds had been moved to her new account. She now had sole access to every penny they'd had in joint savings. It wasn't stealing. It was her money. Her business profits. Money she'd earned and saved. Brandon had contributed almost nothing over the past year, claiming he was building his investment portfolio. Now she knew what that meant. He'd been investing in his relationship with Tiffany. Simone thought about the prenup she'd signed. The one Brandon had insisted on. She'd need to have a lawyer look at it, but she had a feeling it wouldn't protect him as much as he thought. Prenups could be contested, especially if fraud or infidelity was involved. And she had evidence. Lots of evidence. Emails, receipts, photographs, hotel bookings. Everything carefully documented and backed up to her cloud storage. Her phone buzzed a third time. This time it was a notification from her business account. A new client had just paid a deposit. $30,000 for a high-end wedding. Simone laughed. It was a bitter sound. Here she was planning to divorce her husband of 3 days, and she was getting hired to plan someone else's wedding. The irony wasn't lost on her. She stood up and gathered her things. She had 6 hours before her flight. Time enough to pack, check out, and get to the airport. Time enough to leave this place and everything it represented behind. As she walked back through the resort, she passed the main pool again. Brandon was there now, sitting on the edge of Tiffany's lounge chair, his hand on her knee. They were laughing about something, their heads close together. They looked happy. Comfortable. Like a real couple. Simone stopped walking and just watched them for a moment. This was the man she'd married. The man she'd trusted with her heart, her home, and her future. He'd thrown it all away for this. 4 stolen moments and secret meetings. For a woman who'd helped him lie. They deserved each other. Simone pulled out her phone and took one more picture. Evidence for the lawyer. Then she turned and walked away. She didn't look back. Simone's hands moved quickly and methodically as she packed. Every piece of clothing, every toiletry, every document. She left nothing behind except the items Brandon had brought for himself. She found the necklace he'd bought for Tiffany. It was in his shaving kit, still in its box. A delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant. Probably cost several $1,000s. Her money, she thought again. She left it on the bed with a note. For your real honeymoon. Enjoy. It was petty, but she didn't care. She was done being the understanding wife. Done being the trusting fool. She checked the room one last time. Her suitcase was packed. Her carry-on held her laptop, documents, and valuables. She'd charged everything to the room, which was still under Brandon's name. He'd have to deal with the bill. Before she left, she wrote a longer note and placed it on his pillow. Brandon, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know about Tiffany. I know about the affair. I know about everything. I've taken the money from our joint accounts. It was my money anyway. You're welcome for the free ride. I've canceled your return flight. I've canceled your credit cards. I've changed the locks on the apartment. Your things will be boxed up and sent to your mother's house. You said I was too trusting. Too naive. You were right. I trusted you completely. I believed every lie. That ends now. Have a nice life with Tiffany. Figure out your own way home. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch. Your ex-wife, Simone. She propped the note against the pillow where he couldn't miss it, then took one last look around the room. This was supposed to be where she started her marriage. Instead, it was where it ended. She called the front desk. This is Mrs. Bennett in Suite 2408. I'm checking out early. Oh no. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Simone lied. Family emergency. I need to get home. Of course. We'll process your checkout. Will Mr. Bennett be staying? Yes, Simone said. He'll be here for a few more days. Keep the room under his name. Charge everything to his card on file. The card that would be declined, she thought with grim satisfaction. She took the service elevator down to avoid running into Brandon or Tiffany. Carlos from the business center saw her leaving and gave her a sympathetic nod. She wondered how much he'd guessed. The taxi ride to the airport felt surreal. The island was beautiful. Clear blue water, white sand beaches, palm trees swaying in the breeze. Couples everywhere holding hands, laughing, enjoying their vacations. She should have been one of them. Should have been walking on that beach with her husband, making memories, starting their life together. Instead, she was fleeing like a refugee from her own honeymoon. At the airport, Simone checked in for her flight. The agent looked at her ticket, then at her face, then back at the ticket. First class to New York, departing in 3 hours. Honeymoon cut short. Everyone kept asking that. Simone wondered if she had abandoned bride written on her forehead. Something like that, she said. Security was quick. She found her way to the first-class lounge and collapsed into a comfortable chair. She ordered a drink. Then another. Not to get drunk, but to calm her nerves. Her phone had been buzzing with texts from Brandon. She'd been ignoring them, but finally she looked. Where are you? Simone, answer me. Are you okay? I'm getting worried. The front desk said you checked out? What's going on? She didn't respond. Let him worry. Let him panic. Let him realize that something had gone very wrong with his perfect plan. She wondered when he'd go back to the room. When he'd find the note. When he'd try to use his credit cards and discover they'd been canceled. She wondered when Tiffany would realize that she was stuck here too, with a man who'd just been abandoned by his wife and had no money to get home. Simone almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Her flight was called. She boarded, found her seat, and buckled in. The first-class cabin was spacious and comfortable. The flight attendant offered her champagne. She accepted it, even though the taste made her think of the wedding toast she'd made 3 days ago. 3 days. Her marriage had lasted 3 days. As the plane took off, Simone looked out the window at the island shrinking below her. Somewhere down there, Brandon was probably just discovering the note. Just realizing that his wife wasn't as naive as he'd thought. She hoped he was panicking. Hoped he was trying to call the bank, the credit card companies, the airline. Hoped he was realizing that he was stuck in a foreign country with his mistress and no way home. She hoped he was scared. The plane leveled off and Simone closed her eyes. She was exhausted. She hadn't slept in over 24 hours, and the adrenaline that had kept her going was finally wearing off. But she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying everything. The wedding. The honeymoon. The discovery. The betrayal. How had she missed the signs? Had she been so blinded by love that she'd ignored obvious red flags? Or had Brandon just been that good at lying? Probably both. Her phone buzzed. She turned off airplane mode before takeoff, and now messages were flooding in. Brandon had tried to call 17 times. There were text messages too. Dozens of them. Starting with confusion, moving to panic, ending with anger. What did you do? Simone, this isn't funny. My cards aren't working. The bank says you transferred all the money? That's illegal. Call me. Now. You can't just leave me here. This is insane. I'm your husband. The last message was the one that made her laugh out loud. A bitter, harsh laugh that made the passenger across the aisle look at her with concern. I'm your husband. 3 days. He'd been her husband for 3 days, and he'd spent at least 2 of those days with another woman. And now he was pulling the husband card? Now he was acting like she owed him something? She blocked his number. Blocked Tiffany's too, just in case. She didn't want to hear from either of them ever again. The flight attendant came by with a menu. Would you like dinner, ma'am? Simone looked at the menu. Gourmet food, carefully prepared, beautifully presented. The kind of meal she should be sharing with her husband on their honeymoon. No thank you, she said. I'm not hungry. She wasn't sure she'd ever be hungry again. The rest of the flight passed in a blur. Simone stared out the window at the clouds, her mind empty of everything except a dull ache in her chest. When the plane landed in New York, it was late evening. She collected her luggage and caught a cab home. The apartment she'd shared with Brandon. The apartment where she'd packed his bags before leaving for the honeymoon, carefully folding his clothes, making sure he had everything he needed. The apartment where she'd been so happy just a week ago. She used her key, half expecting to find it wouldn't work even though she'd told Brandon she was changing the locks. But it worked fine. She hadn't actually changed them yet. That would be tomorrow's task. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Clean. Organized. Decorated with photos of her and Brandon. Happy photos. Lying photos. She walked through each room looking at the life they'd built. His clothes in the closet. His books on the shelf. His coffee mug in the kitchen. All of it would have to go. But not tonight. Tonight she was too tired. She fell into bed, still fully clothed, and finally allowed herself to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the marriage that never was. For the trust that had been broken. For the future that would never happen. She cried until she had no tears left. And then, finally, she slept. Simone woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of her phone ringing. She'd forgotten to silence it. Groggily she reached for it, then saw the unknown number and let it go to voicemail. Probably Brandon calling from someone else's phone since she'd blocked him. She didn't want to hear it. She got up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her skin was blotchy. She looked like she'd been through a war. In a way she had been. The apartment felt different now. Empty. Like a museum of a life that no longer existed. She couldn't stay here. Not long term. Maybe not at all. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. Despite her better judgment, she listened to it. It wasn't Brandon. It was the resort manager. Mrs. Bennett, this is Gerald Hoffman from the resort. I'm calling regarding an incident yesterday. Your husband, Mr. Brandon Bennett, was unable to settle the room charges and became quite agitated when his credit cards were declined. He also was very upset about his canceled flight. He made some serious accusations about you, Mrs. Bennett, and I wanted to reach out to you directly. Please call me when you get a chance. I hope everything is all right. Simone saved the message. More evidence for the lawyer. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. It was time to start making real plans. The revenge had been satisfying, but it was just the beginning. She needed to think about the future. First, she needed a divorce lawyer. She searched online and found several highly rated family law attorneys. She made notes, planning to start calling when offices opened. Second, she needed to deal with the apartment. The lease was in both their names. She'd have to figure out if she wanted to stay or move. Either way, Brandon's name needed to come off the lease. Third, she needed to change all her passwords, update her emergency contacts, and separate any remaining shared accounts. Fourth, and most importantly, she needed to figure out what she wanted her life to look like now. Before Brandon, she'd had dreams. She'd wanted to expand her event planning business, maybe hire staff, take on bigger clients. She'd put some of those dreams on hold when they'd gotten engaged, thinking she'd have time later. thinking she needed to focus on building their life together. Now she realized that was a mistake. She should never have put her dreams on hold for someone who'd never valued them anyway. Her phone rang again. This time it was her best friend, Naomi. "Please tell me you're not actually on your honeymoon right now," Naomi said as soon as Simone answered. "Why would you think that?" "Because I just got a very strange call from Brandon's mother asking if I'd heard from you. She said Brandon called her freaking out, saying you'd abandoned him in the Caribbean and stolen all his money." Simone laughed. Felt good to laugh. "I didn't steal anything. I moved my own money out of our joint account." "Oh my God. What happened?" Simone told her everything. The discovery, the emails, the affair, the revenge. Naomi listened without interrupting, though Simone could hear her gasping at various points. "That man is trash," Naomi said when Simone finished. "Absolute garbage. I'm so sorry, Simone. But also, I'm proud of you. You didn't fall apart. You took action." "I fell apart a little," Simone admitted. "But I did it after I'd handled business." "As you should. Listen, do you want me to come over? I can bring wine and ice cream and we can burn things." "That's tempting, but I think I need to be alone for a bit. Process everything." "Okay, but I'm checking on you every few hours. And if you need anything at all, I'm there." "Thank you. That means everything." After they hung up, Simone felt a little better. She had friends. She had support. She wasn't alone in this. Over the next several hours, she made phone calls. She spoke to 3 different lawyers and chose one who specialized in divorce cases involving infidelity and financial deception. Her name was Patricia Chin, and she had a reputation for being thorough and aggressive. "Bring me everything," Patricia said. "Emails, receipts, photos, bank statements, everything. If what you're telling me is accurate, that prenup won't protect him. Fraud vitiates everything." Simone emailed her all the evidence she'd collected. She called a locksmith and scheduled him to come change the locks. She called the landlord and explained the situation. He was sympathetic and agreed to remove Brandon from the lease once she provided the divorce filing paperwork. She called her parents. That conversation was harder. They'd loved Brandon. They'd been so happy at the wedding. Telling them what had happened felt like admitting she'd made a terrible mistake. But her mother's response surprised her. "I never liked him," her mother said bluntly. "Too smooth. Too charming. I didn't say anything because you seemed happy, but I always thought something was off about him. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened?" Simone thought about it. Probably not. She'd been in love. She'd thought she knew better. "I'm sorry this happened to you, baby," her father said. He'd picked up the other line. "But I'm proud of how you handled it. Shows strength. Character. That man didn't deserve you." After she hung up with her parents, Simone stood in the middle of the living room and looked around. Brandon's things were everywhere. His jacket on the chair. His shoes by the door. His laptop on the coffee table. She started gathering everything. Clothes, electronics, books, personal items. She packed it all into boxes and labeled them. She'd have them shipped to his mother's house. He could deal with them there. As she worked, her anger began to fade into something else. Not forgiveness. Not even sadness anymore. Just a quiet determination to move forward. She'd wasted enough time and energy on Brandon. He'd taken enough from her. She wasn't going to give him one more day of her life. That night, Simone ordered takeout and sat on her couch watching a mindless comedy. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from unknown numbers. Brandon still trying to reach her. She ignored all of them. Around midnight, she got a text from an unknown number that she almost deleted. But something made her read it. "This is Tiffany. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I didn't know he was going to do this. I thought he loved me. I thought after the honeymoon he was going to divorce you and we'd be together. But now he's saying it's all my fault and he wants nothing to do with me. I'm stuck here alone. I have a ticket home but not for days. I don't understand what's happening." Simone stared at the message. Part of her felt vindicated. Brandon had used Tiffany just like he'd used her. Another part of her felt nothing at all. She typed back a single sentence. "You knew he was married. You made your choice." Then she blocked that number too. She didn't owe Tiffany sympathy. Didn't owe her understanding. Tiffany had made her choices and now she'd live with the consequences. Simone turned off her phone and went to bed. For the first time in days she felt like she could actually sleep. Tomorrow she'd start rebuilding. Tonight she'd rest. The worst was over. What came next was up to her. 4 days after returning home, Simone sat in Patricia Chen's office reviewing divorce papers. Patricia was a sharp woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that missed nothing. "This prenup is a joke," Patricia said, tossing the document on her desk. It's completely one-sided and was signed under duress. You had no independent legal counsel, no time to review it properly, and based on the emails you showed me, Brandon actively misrepresented its contents. A judge will throw this out in 5 minutes. So I can contest it? We can do better than that. Based on the evidence you've provided, we can argue fraud in the inducement of marriage. He married you under false pretenses while actively conducting an affair. We can request a significant settlement. I don't want his money, Simone said. I just want my money back. The money he spent on her. Patricia nodded approvingly. That we can definitely get. Plus, since you separated immediately upon discovering the affair, there's no issue of marital assets. Everything you earned before and during the marriage stays yours. Everything he earns stays his. Which, from what I can see, isn't much. He's going to fight this. Let him try. The evidence is overwhelming. And frankly, once his employer finds out he was using work trips to conduct an affair and charged personal expenses to company accounts, he'll have bigger problems than this divorce. Simone hadn't thought about that. Should we tell his employer? Not yet. Let's focus on the divorce. But keep it in your back pocket. If he makes this difficult, we have options. That afternoon, Simone met with her business accountant. She needed to understand exactly where she stood financially. You're in good shape, the accountant told her. Your business has strong cash flow. The money you transferred from the joint account was all yours anyway. And with the new client deposit, you're looking at your most profitable quarter ever. It was ironic. Her personal life had imploded, but her business was thriving. I want to expand, Simone said suddenly. The decision felt right. I want to hire staff, take on bigger events, maybe even open a small office. That's ambitious. But based on these numbers, it's doable. You'd need to take on some debt for the office space, but your revenue can support it. For the first time since the honeymoon, Simone felt excited about something. Her business had always been her passion. She'd built it from nothing, starting with small birthday parties and gradually working her way up to weddings and corporate events. Now she could take it to the next level. Not for Brandon. Not to support a partnership that had never been real. But for herself. Let's do it, she said. Draw up a business plan. I want to start looking for office space next week. That evening, Naomi came over with Thai food and wine. They sat on the floor of Simone's living room, eating pad Thai straight from the containers. You look better, Naomi said. More like yourself. I feel better. Angry but better. Angry is good. Angry gets things done. Simone's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and grimaced. Let me guess, Naomi said. Brandon's mother? 10th call today. She keeps leaving messages about how I'm being cruel and unreasonable. How Brandon made a mistake but he still loves me. How I should at least send him money to get home. Are you kidding me? He cheated on you on your honeymoon. Apparently that's just a mistake. But me taking my own money out of my own bank account is theft. Naomi shook her head. The audacity. Are you going to respond? No. Patricia said not to talk to anyone from his family. Everything goes through her now. Good. You don't owe them anything. Especially not money to bail out the cheater. Simone's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from an address she didn't recognize. She opened it and immediately wished she hadn't. It was from Brandon. Simone, I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But what you did was wrong. You left me stranded in a foreign country with no money and no way home. Do you know what that was like? Do you know how scared I was? I had to call my mother. I had to beg her to wire me money. I had to explain to the resort manager why my wife had abandoned me. It was humiliating. And for what? Because I made a mistake? Because I got close to someone else? That doesn't give you the right to steal from me and destroy my life. I'm back in the States now. My mother's money got me home. But I have no apartment, no money, no access to anything. You've locked me out of my own life. I'm willing to forgive you for what you did if you're willing to forgive me. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I still love you, Simone. I know I have a funny way of showing it, but I do. Please, can we just talk? Brandon. Simone read the email twice, her anger building with each word. He was the victim now. He was scared. He was humiliated. And calling the affair, getting close to someone else? Not cheating. Not betrayal. Just getting close. What is it? Naomi asked, seeing Simone's face. Simone handed her the phone. Naomi read the email, her expression darkening. He's delusional, Naomi said. Absolutely delusional. He doesn't even take responsibility. It's all mistakes, and getting close to someone like he accidentally tripped and fell into an affair. And he wants me to forgive him, Simone said. Like I'm the one who did something wrong. Forward this to Patricia. Let her handle it. Simone did. Patricia's response came back within minutes. Perfect. He just admitted to the affair in writing. This helps our case immensely. Do not respond to him directly. Over the next week, Simone fell into a new routine. Wake up, work on her business, meet with her lawyer, look at potential office spaces, avoid calls from Brandon's family. She learned through Naomi's connections that Brandon had indeed moved back in with his mother. That Tiffany had made it home and immediately been fired from her job when the affair came to light. That Brandon was telling everyone who would listen that Simone had overreacted and destroyed his life over nothing. Nothing. That's what he called it. Simone also learned that the resort had banned Brandon from ever returning. Apparently, his behavior when his cards were declined had been so terrible that management considered him a security risk. She felt a grim satisfaction at that. At least there were consequences for his actions, even small ones. Patricia filed the divorce papers. Brandon had 30 days to respond. He'll probably contest it, Patricia warned. They usually do. But we have such a strong case that any judge will see through it. Simone wasn't worried about the divorce anymore. She was more focused on moving forward. She found a small office space in a trendy neighborhood. It needed work, but it had good bones and a great location. She signed a lease and started planning renovations. She hired her first employee, a recent college graduate named Denise who was eager and talented. Together, they started planning bigger events and reaching out to higher-end clients. Her business grew. Her confidence grew. Her happiness grew. She still had moments of sadness. Moments where she'd see a couple holding hands and feel a pang of loss. Not for Brandon specifically, but for the idea of what her marriage could have been if it had been real. But those moments got fewer and farther between. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, Simone received a response from Brandon's lawyer. As predicted, he was contesting everything. Claiming the money was his. Claiming she'd stolen from him. Claiming emotional distress. Patricia laughed when she read it. He's grasping at straws. Every claim is easily disproven. This will be over quickly. And it was. When faced with the overwhelming evidence of his affair, the fraudulent prenup, and the fact that the money had all come from Simone's business, Brandon's lawyer advised him to settle. He didn't want to. His mother urged him to fight. But his lawyer made it clear that fighting would only make things worse. The judge would not be sympathetic to a man who'd cheated on his wife on their honeymoon. 3 months after the worst day of her life, Simone signed the divorce settlement. She got everything she'd asked for. Reimbursement for the money Brandon had spent on his affair. Full ownership of her business. Full ownership of the apartment. Full separation of all assets. Brandon got nothing except the freedom to move on with his life. Patricia sent her a congratulatory text. Justice served. Go build your empire. Simone intended to do exactly that. 6 months after her disastrous honeymoon, Simone stood in her new office and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. The space was beautiful. Clean white walls, modern furniture, fresh flowers on every desk. Large windows let in natural light. Photos of successful events lined the walls. This was hers. Every piece of it. Built with her money, her vision, her work. The new client is here, Denise said, poking her head in. Should I bring her to the conference room? Give me 2 minutes, Simone said. She checked her appearance in the small mirror by her desk. She looked good. Professional. Put together. Her hair was styled in a new cut, shorter and more modern. Her suit was tailored and confident. She looked like a woman who had her life together. And for the first time in months she felt like it too. The client was a bride-to-be named Jennifer, planning a wedding for the following summer. She wanted something elegant but not stuffy, romantic but not over the top. I've heard amazing things about your work, Jennifer said. My friend used you for her company's holiday party, and she couldn't stop raving. Simone smiled. Word of mouth was the best advertising. Her business had grown exponentially in the past few months. She'd hired 3 more staff members. She'd planned events for some of the city's most influential people. She'd been featured in 2 bridal magazines. She was becoming known as the planner who could make anything happen. Tell me about your vision, Simone said, pulling out her tablet. What's your perfect day look like? Jennifer described her dream wedding. As she talked, Simone took notes and asked questions. This was what she loved about her job. Taking someone's vision and making it real. Halfway through the consultation, Jennifer paused. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. I heard that you were married briefly. That it didn't work out. Simone's smile didn't falter. She'd prepared for this question. People talked. Rumors spread. She couldn't hide her past. That's true, she said calmly. I was married for 3 days before I discovered my husband was having an affair. We divorced shortly after. Jennifer looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up. It's okay. It's just part of my story. And honestly, it made me better at my job. How so? Simone thought about how to answer. I learned that it's not the wedding that matters. It's the marriage. It's the foundation you build. I thought I had that foundation, but I didn't. Now when I plan weddings, I make sure the couple is focused on the right things. Not just the perfect day, but the perfect life together. Jennifer nodded slowly. That's actually really helpful. I've been so stressed about centerpieces and seating charts that I forgot why we're doing this in the first place. Exactly. The details matter, but the relationship matters more. If you've got that, everything else is just decoration. By the end of the meeting, Jennifer had signed a contract. As Simone walked her out, she felt good. Not just about the new client, but about how she'd handled the personal question. She wasn't hiding from her past anymore. She was owning it, using it to become stronger. That evening, Simone had dinner with Naomi at their favorite restaurant. It had become a weekly tradition. Every Thursday, no matter how busy they were, they made time for each other. You look happy, Naomi said, studying her friend. Really happy. Not fake happy. I am happy, Simone said, surprised to realize it was true. Things are good. Business is booming. I love my new office. I'm sleeping through the night again. What about dating? Have you thought about putting yourself out there? Simone shook her head. Not yet. I'm not ready. Maybe not for a long time. That's fair. You've been through a lot. It's not just that. I need to figure out who I am without needing to be part of a couple. I spent so much time being Brandon's girlfriend, then fiancée, then wife. Even before that, I was always in relationships. I've never just been me. I think that's really healthy, Naomi said. Take your time. The right person will come along when you're ready. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just be happy alone. That's okay too. The truth was, Simone wasn't sure if she'd ever want to get married again. The whole experience had left her skeptical of romance and wary of trust. Maybe that would change eventually. Maybe not. Either way, she was okay with it. Over the next few months, Simone heard occasional updates about Brandon through mutual acquaintances. He was still living with his mother. He'd lost his job after his company discovered he'd been using work trips to see Tiffany and charging personal expenses to his corporate card. He was working retail now, trying to rebuild his life. Tiffany had moved to another city, trying to escape the scandal. Apparently, their relationship had imploded the moment Simone left them stranded. They'd turned on each other, blaming each other for the situation, fighting constantly about money and fault and who had messed up worse. They'd never even made it back to the States as a couple. By the time Brandon's mother wired the money for flights, they were barely speaking. Simone felt nothing hearing these updates. No satisfaction. No sympathy. Just indifference. They were strangers now. People she used to know. They had no power over her anymore. She'd taken her power back. Simone's business continued to grow. She planned a high-profile wedding for a local celebrity. She organized a charity gala that raised over $1 million. She was approached by a television production company about a reality show following her work. She turned down the show. She didn't want fame. She just wanted success on her own terms. She hired 2 more staff members. Her team was now 7 people, all talented and passionate about their work. They felt like family. Denise, her first hire, had become not just an employee but a friend. They worked well together, complementing each other's skills. Denise handled the creative vision while Simone managed logistics and client relations. You know what I love about working here? Denise said one day. You trust us. You hire good people and then let them do their jobs. That's rare. Simone smiled. I learned the hard way about trying to control everything. Sometimes you just have to trust people and hope for the best. And if they betray that trust? Then you deal with it and move on. But you can't live your life assuming everyone will hurt you. That's no way to exist. It was a lesson she was still learning. How to be cautious without being cynical. How to protect herself without building walls so high that nothing good could get in either. 1 year after her disastrous honeymoon, Simone threw a party. Not for a client. For herself. She invited everyone who'd supported her through the divorce and the rebuilding. Her parents. Naomi. Her staff. A few close friends. Her lawyer Patricia, who'd become a friend through the process. They gathered in her office after hours. Simone had catered food brought in and champagne chilling in buckets. "What are we celebrating?" her father asked. "Survival," Simone said, raising her glass. "And success. And being strong enough to start over when everything falls apart." Everyone raised their glasses. To Simone, Naomi called out, "The strongest woman I know." They drank. They ate. They laughed. Simone looked around at the faces of people who genuinely cared about her. People who'd shown up when things were hard. People who celebrated her now that things were good. This was what mattered. Not the perfect wedding or the perfect marriage, but the perfect support system. The real relationships. As the party wound down, Simone stood at her office window looking out at the city. Lights sparkled in the darkness. Life continued everywhere, people living and loving and making mistakes and trying again. She'd made mistakes. She'd trusted the wrong person. She'd missed red flags. She'd been naive. But she'd also been brave. She'd walked away. She'd taken action. She'd rebuilt. That's what she wanted to be known for. Not as the woman whose husband cheated on their honeymoon, but as the woman who turned that betrayal into something powerful. Her phone buzzed. A notification from her business social media account. Another client had tagged her in a post, thanking her for making their event perfect. Simone smiled. This was her life now. Not perfect. Not what she'd planned. But hers. And that was enough. The knock on Simone's office door came at 4 in the afternoon on an ordinary Tuesday. Denise stuck her head in, looking uncomfortable. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment. He says it's important." "Who is it?" Denise hesitated. "It's Brandon." Simone's stomach dropped. She hadn't seen or spoken to Brandon in almost a year. Not since the divorce was finalized. She'd successfully moved on with her life, and she'd assumed he'd done the same. "Tell him I'm not available," Simone said. "I tried. He says he'll wait. He says he's not leaving until he talks to you." Simone considered calling security. But part of her was curious. What could he possibly want after all this time? "Fine," she said. "Give me 5 minutes. Then show him in. But stay close. If things get uncomfortable, I want you to interrupt." "Are you sure about this?" "No. But let's get it over with." 5 minutes later, Brandon walked into her office. He looked terrible. Thinner than she remembered, with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were worn. He looked like a man who'd been through hard times. Simone felt nothing. No sympathy. No anger. Just a vague discomfort at having him in her space. "Hello, Simone," he said. "Brandon. What do you want?" He looked around the office. "This place is nice. Really nice. Looks like you've done well for yourself." "I have." "Now what do you want?" He sat down without being invited. Simone stayed standing, maintaining the power position. "I need your help," he said. Simone almost laughed. "You need my help?" "I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. I'm facing fraud charges for what happened at my old job. If I'm convicted, I could go to jail. And my lawyer says I need character witnesses. People who can testify that I'm not a bad person. That I made mistakes but I'm not a criminal. And you want me to be a character witness. You know me better than anyone. You know I'm not a bad person. I made mistakes in our marriage, yes. But I never meant to hurt you. I was confused. I was scared of commitment. I handled it wrong, but my heart was never malicious." Simone stared at him. "Are you serious right now?" "Simone, please. I know I don't deserve your help. But I'm desperate. I could lose everything." "You already lost everything," Simone said coldly. "You lost it when you decided to cheat on your wife on your honeymoon. When you spent my money on your mistress. When you lied and manipulated and used me. I know. I know I was wrong. And I've paid for it. I've lost my job, my reputation, my life. Isn't that enough?" "That's not my concern. Please, Simone. Just think about it. I'm not asking you to lie. Just tell the court that I'm not a monster. That I was a decent husband before I made my mistake." "You were never a decent husband. You were a liar from the start." Brandon stood up, his desperation turning to anger. "You ruined my life. You left me stranded in a foreign country. You took all the money. You destroyed everything. And now you can't even help me when I'm facing jail time?" Denise appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay, Simone?" "We're fine," Simone said calmly. "Mr. Bennett was just leaving. I'm not leaving until you agree to help me. Then I'm calling security." Brandon's face crumpled. "Please. I'm begging you. I have nothing left. No job, no money, no future. If I go to jail, that's it. My life is over. Your life isn't over, Simone said. Your easy ride is over. Your ability to use people is over. But your life? You still have that. Which is more than you gave me when you destroyed our marriage. That's not fair. You moved on fine. Look at this place. Look at your success. You didn't suffer at all. Simone walked around her desk and stood directly in front of him. I didn't suffer? You have no idea what I went through. The nights I couldn't sleep. The panic attacks. The trust issues. The therapy sessions. The humiliation of everyone knowing what you did. I rebuilt my life from scratch while you were crying to your mother and blaming everyone but yourself. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry for everything. What more do you want from me? Nothing. I want nothing from you. Which is why you need to leave now. So that's it? You're just going to let me go to jail? You put yourself in this situation. I had nothing to do with your fraud charges. That's all you. But you could help me. I could. But I won't. Simone walked to her office door and held it open. Goodbye, Brandon. Don't come here again. He stood there for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions. Anger. Desperation. Finally, defeat. You've changed, he said. You used to be kind. Forgiving. I used to be naive, Simone corrected. I got smarter. He walked to the door, then paused. I'm telling everyone the truth now. About what really happened. About how you overreacted and destroyed everything over a simple mistake. People need to know what kind of person you really are. Simone smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Tell whoever you want, Brandon. But I have emails, photos, evidence. And everyone already knows what kind of person you are. The kind who cheats on his wife on their honeymoon. That story tends to trump whatever lies you're selling. He left without another word. Simone closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She'd stayed calm during the confrontation, but now that it was over, she was shaking. Denise appeared with a glass of water. Are you okay? I'm fine, Simone said. Actually, I'm better than fine. I just realized I'm completely over him. You handled that perfectly. Did I? Part of me feels guilty. Don't. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. That evening, Simone called Patricia and told her about Brandon's visit. Did you agree to anything? Patricia asked immediately. No. I told him to leave. Good. Because he's trying to manipulate you again. The fraud charges have nothing to do with you or the divorce. He stole from his company. That's on him. So I made the right call? Absolutely. And Simone? You should know that his lawyer contacted me last week asking if you'd be willing to write a letter of support for him. I told them no on your behalf. He didn't mention that. Because he was hoping to manipulate you directly. Don't let him back into your life even to help him. After hanging up, Simone sat in her office thinking. A year ago she probably would have helped him. Not because she owed him anything but because she would have felt guilty. Would have thought maybe she had overreacted. Maybe she could do this one thing. But she'd learned since then that some people don't deserve second chances. Some people will take any kindness as weakness and use it against you. Brandon was one of those people. She pulled up her calendar for the next day. 2 client meetings. A site visit for an upcoming wedding. Lunch with a potential investor who wanted to help her expand into destination event planning. Her life was full. Rich. Meaningful. Brandon's problems were not her responsibility. She closed her laptop and headed home, feeling lighter than she had in days. The past had tried to reach out and pull her back. But she'd refused to go. She'd stayed firmly planted in her present, in the life she'd built. And that, she realized, was true freedom. 15 months after the worst day of her life, Simone stood in her newly expanded office space and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The renovation had taken 3 months, but it was worth it. The new space doubled her square footage and included a beautiful showroom where clients could see samples of her work. This is incredible, Denise said, walking through the space. Remember when it was just you working from your apartment? Feels like a lifetime ago, Simone said. Because in many ways it had been. She was a different person now. Stronger. Wiser. More herself than she'd ever been. Her phone rang. It was a new client calling to book her for a wedding 18 months out. Simone smiled. She was now booking that far in advance. Her business had become one of the most sought-after event planning services in the city. But more than the success, she was proud of the reputation she'd built. She was known for creating authentic celebrations. For making sure couples focused on the relationship, not just the party. For bringing meaning to every event she planned. She'd taken her pain and turned it into purpose. That evening, Simone attended a charity event she'd organized. It was a book drive for underprivileged children, held at a beautiful venue downtown. She donated her services, wanting to give back to the community that had supported her business. She was checking on the catering when someone tapped her shoulder. "Excuse me, are you Simone?" She turned to find a man standing there. He was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He wore a simple suit and held a book in his hand. "I am," she said. "Can I help you?" "I'm Isaiah. I own the bookstore that's partnering with this event. I just wanted to thank you for organizing this. It's really going to make a difference for these kids." "It's my pleasure. I love what you do at your bookstore. The reading programs, the author events. It's wonderful." They talked for a few minutes about books and literacy and the importance of giving children access to stories. Simone found herself enjoying the conversation. Isaiah was genuine and passionate about his work. He didn't seem to want anything from her except to share his appreciation. Before he left, he handed her his card. "If you ever need books for an event, or if you just want to grab coffee and talk more about literacy programs, give me a call." Simone looked at the card. "I might do that." "I hope you do," he said, then walked away to greet other donors. Naomi appeared at Simone's elbow. "Who was that?" "The bookstore owner. Isaiah. He was cute, and he gave you his card." "That's promising." "It was a business card, Naomi. He was networking." "Ah. Did you see the way he looked at you? That was not a business look." Simone laughed. "You're ridiculous." But later that night, alone in her apartment, she looked at Isaiah's card. She traced the embossed lettering of the bookstore name. She thought about his smile. His genuine interest in the work she did. Maybe she'd call him. Maybe not for a date, but for coffee. To talk about books and literacy and building something meaningful. Maybe she was ready to open herself up to the possibility of connection again. Not desperate for it. Not needing it. But open to it. That was the difference. A week later, Simone had lunch with her parents. They sat at their favorite restaurant, the same place they'd celebrated her engagement to Brandon. She'd avoided this restaurant for months after the divorce. But she'd reclaimed it, refusing to let bad memories steal good places from her. "You look happy, baby," her mother said. "Really, truly happy." "I am, Mom. I really am." "Met anyone new?" her father asked, trying to sound casual. "Maybe. There's a guy. Isaiah. He owns a bookstore. We've been talking. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice." "Take your time," her mother said. "The right person will wait." Simone thought about that. Isaiah hadn't pushed for anything. They'd had coffee twice now, long conversations about books and business and life. He'd listened to her story without judgment. He'd shared his own story of a failed engagement years ago. They were both people who'd been hurt and learned from it. That created a different kind of foundation. One built on reality instead of fantasy. "I'm not rushing anything," Simone said. "I've learned my lesson about jumping in too fast." 2 months later, Simone was featured in a major business magazine. The article was titled "Rising from the Ashes: How One Entrepreneur Turned Heartbreak into Success." She'd been nervous about doing the interview, worried about reliving the past. But the journalist had been respectful, focusing more on her business growth than on the divorce drama. The article came out beautifully. It talked about her journey from event coordinator to business owner. It highlighted her unique approach to planning celebrations. It mentioned the divorce only briefly, framing it as a catalyst for change rather than a tragedy. Orders flooded in after the article published. Her website crashed from traffic. Her phone rang constantly. She hired 3 more staff members to handle the demand. "You did it," Denise said, looking at the magazine spread. "You really did it." "We did it," Simone corrected. "This is a team effort." That night, she celebrated with her staff. Then she went home and called Isaiah. They'd been seeing each other regularly now, taking things slowly. "Congratulations on the article," he said. "I read it 3 times. I'm really proud of you." "Thank you. Want to come over? I have champagne and I don't want to drink alone." "Be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, they sat on her couch and toasted to her success. Then they talked about everything and nothing. Books he was reading. Events she was planning. His idea to start a mobile library. Her idea to offer destination wedding planning. It was easy. Comfortable. Real. "Can I ask you something?" Isaiah said. "Sure. Are you happy? I mean really happy? Not just professionally but in your life." Simone thought about it. "Yes, I really am. For the first time in my life, I'm happy with just being me. I don't need anything else to feel complete." "That's good," Isaiah said. Because I like spending time with you and I want to keep doing it. But I need to know you're doing it because you want to, not because you need to fill some void. I want to, Simone said. I'm not ready for anything serious. Maybe not for a long time. But I like you. I like talking to you. I like how you make me laugh. That works for me, Isaiah said. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people enjoying each other's company. They clinked glasses again. 3 months after that, Simone threw a party to celebrate her business's 2nd anniversary. She invited everyone who'd been part of her journey. Her staff. Her clients. Her family. Her friends. Isaiah came too, and when people asked who he was, she introduced him as her friend. Which was true. They were friends. Friends who were slowly becoming something more, but at a pace that felt right for both of them. At one point during the party, Simone stepped outside for some air. She looked up at the stars and thought about how far she'd come. 2 years ago, she'd been standing in a hotel hallway, watching her world fall apart. She'd felt broken. Used. Worthless. Now she stood outside her own thriving business, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her, looking forward to a future she'd built herself. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been dark days. Days when getting out of bed felt impossible. Days when she'd questioned everything about herself. But she'd survived. More than survived. She'd thrived. You okay? Isaiah asked, joining her outside. I'm perfect, Simone said. And she meant it. She'd learned that happiness wasn't about finding the right person or having the perfect life. It was about being okay with yourself. About building something meaningful. About surrounding yourself with people who genuinely cared. She'd learned that revenge wasn't about making others suffer. It was about taking back your power and refusing to let anyone else's actions define you. She'd learned that love was still possible, but it had to start with loving yourself first. Most importantly, she'd learned that she was strong enough to handle whatever life threw at her. She'd been tested in the worst way possible, and she'd come through it not just intact but better. Brandon had tried to break her. Instead, he'd freed her. Freed her from a marriage that would have slowly destroyed her. Freed her to become the person she was always meant to be. She didn't thank him for it. She never would. But she was grateful for the lesson. Want to go back inside? Isaiah asked. In a minute, Simone said. I'm just enjoying the moment. Because this moment was hers. This life was hers. This happiness was hers. And no one could ever take that away from her again. She'd made sure of it.